I'm Sarah Hodges, and this is Executives Uncut, the podcast where we provide solutions for the corporate cycle of hell. Today, we're talking about self promotion. And joining us is Medina Jett of Jett Speaks LLC, a consulting firm that helps women and people of color rise professionally. Welcome, Medina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
I'm so
Glad to
excited.
be
So
here.
Medina and I met in the most hilarious way. So I, like every other coach and consultant, reach out to people on LinkedIn, right? And introduce them and see if they have a need for my services. I try not to be too, pushy or too spammy about it and make a genuine connection. Anyway, Medina was like, "Oh, I like your approach, but I don't really need these services." And I was like, "Oh, she likes my approach, new friend." And I was like, "Do you want to have a networking call?" And she was like, "I said I'm not interested in your services." And I was like, "No, I swear, I know what the word no means. I just think that we might like each other." And she's like, "Oh, okay." Fast forward, we're doing a podcast together. Aren't you
And that's
glad?
and that's why they say tone can be misinterpreted when it's not live because I didn't have that tone, but I did really like your approach. And I just thought you're so refreshing because I do the same thing. I mean, that's how I get a lot of my clients. So I get it. It
Yeah.
just wasn't such a great fit for me, but I'm glad you were persistent. So
Me too. And here we are to talk about self promotion, which is funny because kind of like, prospecting on LinkedIn kind of is self promotion. You're like, "Hey, I'm
it,
open for
you know,
business. I'm pretty good at what I do."
right,
What else?
right.
But I want to hear more about Jet Speaks. What inspired you to create your new firm?
Sure. So I have been in the financial services industry my entire career. I've been an attorney for 30 years. I own a compliance consulting firm where we do compliance for the financial services industry. And so this has been my thing. But I also realized that with 2020 marking the 30th year of my career, that there's so much that I have learned through the years, so much about how to be an executive. I had been, senior executive at three Fortune 100 companies before I started Jet Speaks. And there's
Awesome.
just so much that you learn along the way that I felt like I should be sharing some of that knowledge to help other women, other people of color reach similar levels of success and just be their best selves in the workplace. And so I started Jet Speaks really with that focus of how do I coach other women to be their best selves. And so often we see that we just don't have the same level of confidence. They don't, we have this huge wage gap. And a lot of it has to do with women not knowing how to go in there and really ask for what they're worth to even feel comfortable with those conversations. And so there's a lot that women and people of color can do in this particular era. And I say this particular era because we're in an era of COVID where folks are, for the most part, working remotely. You're not getting the FaceTime, and it's a challenge to try to stay relevant. And then we're also going through this time in our country where America is recognizing the inequalities, particularly the racial inequalities that a lot of people of color have had to face. And so focusing on how do we do our part to be our best selves. And then we also have, so we take this top down, bottom up approach where we're working with companies to help them be more inclusive
Love it.
across all gender areas. And then we're working with Black professionals, female professionals, to really position them to be able to go into those workplaces and be successful. So it's a
Yeah.
model that I believe in. And so I started this company and we'll see how it works.
That's awesome. I think that's so amazing. And I love how you are taking the approach of like, okay, let's have the individual do what they can do to change the situation. And then
Exactly.
also, help the company. But in
Mhm.
terms of the individual, you mentioned that you struggled in the past with promoting yourself and your accomplishments without sounding, what was the word you used?
Braggadocious. I have always, so growing up, I always had the notion that it was like braggadocious was not a good quality to have. And so I was always a pretty smart kid, and folks would, always want to brag about me, and I would always get so embarrassed. Like, just like that's not a good thing. And I
Hmm.
and I carried that into my career.
Yeah.
But I had one manager who said to me, and this was pretty early on in my career, he said, "If you've done a great job, like take credit for that." Like,
Yeah.
don't just sit there quietly and afraid to talk about the great things that you're doing. And I realized that there is room for validating yourself and promoting your accomplishments without going too far with it and becoming braggadocious. And so I like to play within that sweet spot where I am actually acknowledging and being proud of accomplishments that I've had, at the same time being being somewhat humble about it and respectful that I've been lucky at the same time. So
Yeah, it's a difficult sweet spot to find, right? And it also really
it
depends
is.
on who you're speaking to, and kind of what their comfort level is, I think. But how did you overcome it in your career personally?
I think I started with the facts.
Mm.
And this is how I did what I did. Not any particular qualities about me that I would be talking about, but merely the facts. And I think that's what really got me comfortable, that I'm not sharing an opinion about myself that maybe others don't share, but it's really just talking about what the particular accomplishment or success may have been. And I think that that's what got me comfortable. But then hearing reinforcement from other people constantly saying, Medina, you're way too humble. Like, you did a bang up job on that. Why aren't you saying so? And I think
That's
that just
awesome.
kind of opened me up a little bit to just say, it's one of those things where I think women and people of color struggle.
Mm.
There's a saying that a woman will only apply for a new role if she can satisfy 90% of the job's requirements, where with a man they satisfy 50% and they're like, whoa, I'm in there, let's go for it. And I think
Yeah.
as women, we in particular need to just think more of ourselves and our accomplishments, and just have a little bit more confidence and go out there and go for a lot more than we otherwise would have.
Yeah, so
So
specifically, well, that's awesome that you were able to overcome it. Like, what what do you teach your clients to help them overcome it? Not just women too, but people of color, because that let's face it, right? Like, I'm a white girl who grew up in a white neighborhood, and I actually lived in a lot of neighborhoods in New York City where there was, more people of color
more
than
black people.
more black
Okay.
people than there were white people. Okay, I was a starving artist house
Right,
Alpha
right, right,
singer,
right.
right? And like, but I would just love to know, like, what kind of advice would you give them, because I wouldn't know what to tell them.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell them, think like a boss. We constantly see people who are so confident and they walk into a room and they just own that room, and they're not shy at all about how great they are and all the great things that they've done. And so that whole notion of think like a boss just gives you the confidence to just walk in and just own the room, own who you are, and step into your greatness, because so many of us are just great and we're doing great things, but if we keep it to ourselves, we aren't able to let that light shine. And so think like a boss is the main thing that I talk to my clients about. And then also, just getting beyond that shyness, building up that self-confidence to say, yes, I've done a great job on this, or yes, I'm reached a certain level of success, or I've done something that others would be inspired by. And being able to use what you've done to inspire other people, that's what makes it easy to talk about what you've done, because it's not about you, right? It's about what you have been able to accomplish to inspire other people, particularly other Black people, where the level of success probably isn't that great. And for them to see someone who has actually accomplished something is very inspirational. And so using your accomplishments to help other people, I think, is a way to overcome that. I don't want to talk about it piece.
Yeah, I that is so cool. So instead of using it as a way to brag about you, if the intention is I want to help them rise and show them that it's possible,
Exactly. Exactly.
that is really, really powerful. So, what can corporations do? Like, let's say there's a traditional, white male executive watching this, all right, or anybody really, and that
Sure,
just
sure.
popped up in my mind. What can they do to help creating an environment where people feel more comfortable, self promoting?
hmm I think they should certainly call on people and acknowledge people more, instead of just always the chosen few who get acknowledged in staff meetings and who get picked on or picked for big assignments, start to tap into other people and create those opportunities for them to also get leadership development or whatever that particular level of exposure might be with the high profile assignment. And then the more the leader acknowledges the great work that others have done and that makes it okay to talk about, and then you'll start to make it possible for others to feel that level of comfort as well.
That's really, really great advice. I think I often, I believe that in order for people to thrive, they need to feel socially safe, right? So they need
Sure.
an environment of social safety in their workplace. And I think about especially, people of color and women, right, where you see the wage gap, about
Hmm.
what can we do to make them feel more socially safe? And what is a better indicator of the fact that someone feels socially safe than if they feel comfortable saying, I did an awesome job at this, you guys.
Exactly. And then the next step is, and by the way, I don't think I'm being compensated fairly. And
Yes.
so it's a huge issue for Black professionals as well as women. We're all behind the eight ball when it comes to that wage gap. And so closing that gap first has to start with you're acknowledging your own worth and your own accomplishments and the value you're bringing to an organization. And then the second step is to make sure that you're closing that gap between what you're being compensated and what you're worth and your value. And so that's where we tend to drop the ball, where we don't necessarily want to walk in and say, I think I deserve a pay raise or a promotion. But being able to first feel comfortable with your own accomplishments and build up that self-confidence helps with that second step, which is really what it's all about. I mean, we all go to work and sure, we want to be recognized for our accomplishments, but at the bottom line and the end of the day, we all work for compensation. I mean, that's the capitalist world we live in.
Yeah.
And so being able to close that wage gap is key. And so I work with my clients a lot on that. How do you have those conversations?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think that a lot of the feedback that we get from others is like, "Oh, you can do this better," or "Oh, improve this here," or "Oh, this is
Yep,
what went
yep, yep.
wrong," and we tend to have that inner monologue, right? That inner voice, and from a brain science perspective, which is my background, I approach things from neuroscience. That's not helpful to us to grow and create new positive habits. We end up just putting more emphasis on the things that aren't working well, and
Right.
I bring this up because self validation is the fifth element of my self leadership program, and it's that way for a reason, right? Like you need to be able to, just like what you were saying, validate and promote yourself internally first, get that internal voice, and it's not just about you know being able to eventually then achieve higher wages, although maybe you're right at the end of the day, it kind of is. But it's also about growth, like improvement, right? Being able to obtain new skills and to feel more confident in your job. Okay, but so let's say that you're doing all of that. You've
Okay.
done the internal piece. You're starting to grow. You're being more confident in your job. You're engaging, and you need to go in and ask for a raise. You freaking deserve it. What do you do? What advice do you give?
My advice first is to make a list of all of your accomplishments, not only for yourself to build that confidence up, get you fired up before you walk in there, but so that you have something to start that conversation with. Because going in and saying I deserve a raise without any context is not gonna work as effectively. And so having all of that documentation of what you've accomplished and how you fare according to your peers. And then walking in there and having that conversation and putting it out on the table. So often we don't want to acknowledge the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is that women are paid 84 cents for every dollar a man earns. And Black women typically earn 64 cents for every dollar a man earns. So put that elephant in the room and walk in there and say, this is a conversation that we need to have. So this is actually a conversation that I had with my 25-year-old daughter who's in the same position where she knows she's underpaid and she needs to walk in and have that conversation. And so coaching her through how to actually have that conversation is very, very powerful. But not acknowledging the issue, I think, is a mistake. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we gotta talk about it And what a lot of women now are doing is sharing information. You know, there used to be a day where no one would talk about their salary. And so we would never know when we were underpaid because nobody was talking about what we made. But
Yep.
now folks are a lot more open and willing to share information, all for the betterment of all of us. So it's a good
Yeah.
thing.
That's so true. I love that you're bringing up these stats. And by the way, your daughter is very lucky to have a mother like you who can coach her to rise professionally, right? Even
Yeah.
if it's, even if she's just a kid, like learn those skills and now, which is amazing. It's something that popped into my head that I talk about a lot with my clients is asking for consent, which sounds kind of like you're putting yourself in a submissive position. For example, going and saying like, would you be open to having a candid conversation about this? And some people kind of balk at that, like, no, we're gonna have the freaking conversation about this. Like,
Uh-huh.
I'm not gonna give
Uh-huh.
them the choice. But what that does is it helps them know that you're not going in an adversary, like, if you don't give me a raise, I'm gonna light this place on fire way,
Right.
right? And you're having an equal conversation on equal ground, and it
Hmm.
puts you on an equal ground with them. You're asking them consent, like, are you open to having this
Yeah.
conversation? And
Yeah. Yeah.
and if they say yes, right, they're also like neurologically primed and wired to then have the conversation. So just a little tip there, if you're
That
going to
is
have a
awesome.
difficult, yeah, if you're going to have a
Hmm.
difficult conversation with their boss, ask them if it's okay, and then get them to say yes.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
You can steal it. It's
Thanks,
okay.
Sarah. Yeah.
No problem. Whatever helps,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, my actually, it's kind of funny. My husband was like, "You're gonna have other like coaches and consultants on your show. Like, what if they want to work with them?" And I was like, "Then go work what? Like, then go work with
Yeah.
them. Your
Yeah.
tribe will find your vibe. Like, if there is a minority
Exactly.
woman who wants to rise, do not hire me as a coach. Hire Medina." I'm like, and not that I can't help you, but I can't help you. I can't understand, right? Like, I just can't. I can't understand some of the things
Some of
that
the
a
challenges.
that a woman of color is going through. Yeah, some of those
Yep.
challenges
Yep.
I just do not get. And I think so. Listen, I feel like if we don't touch on like the current climate, right, that we're missing an elephant in the room. Is there
Exactly.
any advice you can give me as a white girl, right, to like help equal the playing field a little bit more for
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just being more open to your network and building relationships, exactly how you did by reaching out to me. And so a lot of times we tend to stay in our own little bubble, right? Our network consists of people who look like us, who have the same background as us. But one way that we become much more inclusive is to expand our network and develop relationships with people who don't have the same experience as you. And what that does is cause us to be more empathetic, right? So you may not get what it's like to be a Black woman in corporate America, but I guarantee you hang around with me long enough, you're gonna get it.
That's a really good point.
You're
I
gonna
love it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so just being more open to people of there's so many people of different backgrounds and experiences that if we just open ourselves up and just make sure that our friend circle consists of more than just people who have our own experience, I think the country will eventually be in a much better place because we can actually see what it's like for somebody else. And once you have that level of empathy, you're then willing to actually take action to try to do something to fix it.
That is awesome advice and also very validating. Thank you. I'll keep doing this. Not that
Okay,
I actually even reached
good.
out to you. I didn't reach out to you because you were a woman of color. I just reached out to you because, I was just reaching out. But I'm so glad that this happened, and hopefully
Yeah.
it will help expand my network, and maybe I will be more mindful about it, I think
Yeah,
there's nothing
yeah.
wrong with
It
that.
it definitely takes some intentionality because otherwise you keep doing the same thing and what do you get? The same result.
So
Yeah.
true. Medina, where can people find you? Oh, we already have it below.
Yeah. Yeah, to my
Mhm.
website, www.jettspeaks.com. We do coaching, we do public speaking around leadership, career development, diversity and inclusion. And we also work with companies who are looking to create more equitable and racially justified organizations. And so reach out if we can help.
So awesome, so important, Medina. Thank you. I'm going to get to your coaching tips now. So we offer coaching tips every week. These coaching tips came from Medina. I wrote them down earlier. You said that the workplace is no place to be humble, which I love. Like, tout your accomplishments. Why not?
Exactly.
And yeah, and think like a boss. That's totally going to be a hashtag for this podcast. I think my intern's still in here. Emily, make that a hashtag for the podcast, please, and thank you. Would you please? Thank you. And then we have a coaching challenge for this week. Um, are you struggling to promote yourself? And if you are, and if you relate to this podcast, then give self promotion a shot this week and try to share an achievement, a personal attribute, or maybe even a moment that you're really proud of with someone close to you. Sometimes we find it difficult to share our achievements at work. So just start close to home. Talk to your husband or your mom or your kids and let them just say good job and start there and then work out. Excellent. Medina, thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. This has been fun.
It was
Appreciate it.
such a pleasure. Awesome. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Executives Uncut. And if you enjoyed the content, make sure to subscribe and share with someone who could benefit from this talk. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google. You can find us everywhere except TikTok. We're not on TikTok. We should get on TikTok. So visit hodgescoaching.com for new episodes or follow us at Hodges Coaching on social media. I'm Sarah Hodges, and I'll see you next week.
All right.